Krishna, to glorify Srila Prabhupada, and also to understand the glories of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So we are very fortunate to have this opportunity to practice devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide representative. So just take our time today to glorify this opportunity that we have and to actually become more aware, conscious of this opportunity that we have by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the Lord and Shishi Gaur Nitai. So here in this chapter 12, it's very clearly, it's like Arjuna asks a very clear question. What do you prefer? So there is no ambiguity here. So it's a very clear question because there are a lot of people who actually construe different meanings from various verses of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. It's hilarious if you ever it's not necessary if you ever happen to stumble upon other interpretations. It's sometimes sinuous, but most of the times it's very, very ridiculous to see how they can mend and manipulate certain words and translations to suit their own philosophies or opinions. However, in chapter 12, nobody can actually twist a lot because the question is very straightforward. What do you like? Do you prefer those who worship the form of the Lord or those who are actually impersonalists? There is a lot of commentaries which twist these verses also, but still it's very difficult to because it's very clearly mentioned here that Krishna says, one who is worshipping me in my personal form is more dear than the impersonal form. It does not mean that he does not disqualify impersonal worship. He says it is too difficult. And what you get is very little. The output that you get is not equivalent to what you can get by worshipping Krishna in the personal form. However, the process is also quite difficult. So Krishna literally discounts it, not as an improper method of worship, because in the previous chapters of Bhagavad Gita, he has also discussed improper worships, methods of surrender like demigod worship. But here he says, it's very troublesome. No need to go through that. Klesho adhikatarastesha. It's too much of a trouble. And what you get is not much different, not much better than what you can get through personal worship. So until then, the narration goes like this. And then now that he has chosen Bhakti, he has chosen the personal form of worship, Krishna wants to actually say, okay, we all might think worshipping personal form is deity worship. It's like a very immediate relation as Bhakti in the looking at it in a generic sense, but in specific sense, it looks like more like worshipping the personal form means doing deity worship. So Krishna wants to elaborate that it's not just about deity worship. So the first level he gives us, the first level of personal worship, worshipping his personal form he gives us, is internally completely meditating about Krishna, fixing one's mind on Krishna always. And obviously, it's not everyone's cup of tea. It's not that everybody is going to be able to do that. So Krishna says, just fix your mind upon me. And in this way, if you engage in me, in my service, then in that way, you will always be with me. So it's a very, it's the perfect level to get to. However, it's not the most easiest thing to do. So Krishna mercifully then gives another level. Oh, okay, if you don't think you are here, Arjuna might think I'm in the war field. It may not be possible for me. So then he says, okay, there's another level also. And by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we all get to come to this one but next level, actually, through the movement of Sankirtan. So he says, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, which is pretty much 99.999% of the devotees, even we can say, it's not very easy to fix the mind upon Krishna without any deviation. So then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. So this is where he introduces Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. If you are not in that platform of undeviated focus on Krishna always, then at least take it up as a regulative principle. Take up the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. What are those? So that is to chant every day, the fixed number of rounds, to follow the regulative principles, to actually follow the bona fide spiritual master, whatever he has laid down for one. So in this way, we can develop a desire to attain Krishna. So the whole purpose of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is to actually is to actually develop a desire to attain Krishna. Even if we don't have a desire to attain Krishna, then what is the beauty of the devotional service? Just by practicing, like chanting, just by regularly chanting, just by reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita, just by hearing from devotees, we actually develop a desire. We gradually come to a stage where we actually want to go to a place where our mind can be completely fixed on Krishna. We may not be there, but a desire is developed gradually. So this is what we need to look when we are practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Is my desire to become more and more focused on Krishna increasing? So there are two things. One is to be Krishna conscious. The other one is to desiring to be Krishna conscious. It's nice. It's good to be desiring to be Krishna conscious, but we also have to become Krishna conscious. So both are. It's a good to start that I want to be Krishna conscious, but we can just be in that stage always. So at the same time, there is another stage called in between. I want to be more Krishna conscious and actually actually being Krishna conscious. So these are different stages. So we are sometimes like jumping between these stages. We think, oh, wish I was a devotee. And then we think, oh, wish I was a better devotee. And then we actually become devotees. So it's not like a definitive stage. We go in between, because even a great advanced devotee still thinks that there is somebody else better. So if we read Brihad Bhagavatam, so still, to be objectively speaking, the practice that Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti that we are doing every day, we are chanting, worshipping the deities, we are hearing Bhagavad Gita or speaking Bhagavad Gita. The whole purpose is so that we can actually become more and more Krishna conscious. And we develop a desire to attain Krishna, real desire from the core of our hearts. We want to be Krishna conscious, or we want to be with Krishna. So that is the purpose. And Krishna says, oh, if this is also not possible for some, so then if we cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, because there can be external or internal reasons for some people to have difficulty in practicing that. So then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So here Krishna is giving this work for Krishna. Srila Prabhupada very clearly says that is very much related to Bhakti Yoga, because, and this is the glory, this is the net that we will be speaking about, spreading the safety net in the process of devotion services. We don't need to spread, because Srila Prabhupada has mercifully spread the safety net for all of us by creating this International Society of Krishna Consciousness. Because one of the purposes is also to provide the Devotee Association. Because in creating ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada has given us 7 purposes. So those 7 purposes, if we see, it's very clear that Srila Prabhupada is actually spreading the safety net for all the current and future practicing devotees. So Hare Krishna. Raj Sharma Prabhu, would you like to mute it, because it's continuously unmuting, muting and unmuting. So just make sure it's on unmute. So here Srila Prabhupada is like mentioning various purposes, and we can see how these purposes and just the Society of Krishna Consciousness acts like a safety net for all of us, especially for our devotional service. So because here Krishna says, work for me. And if you read the purport, Srila Prabhupada very clearly writes how this particular working for Krishna is not just any karma yoga or anything.
Raj Prabhu, can you mute Prabhu? Raj Prabhu, Hare Krishna, can you mute? Prabhu, sorry, I am just seeing what I can do. So go ahead.
Okay.
Raj Prabhu, can you mute?
Settings.
Okay, I can do that. I think, yeah.
No problem. So here we're specifically speaking about working for Krishna in this verse, because if you see the Sanskrit, it says mat karma paramo bhava. Very clearly Krishna says my work, do my work. And Srila Prabhupada very in the purport, if you read, he clearly speaks how this work is very much directly related to devotees. And when we are actually when we are actually so one thing you can do is, if you can make me a co-host, then I can do that setting.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm doing immediately, bro.
Yeah, no problem.
So no, yeah, he's with a small kids, so that's what is the
I
problem.
understand. I understand.
More make a cost. Yes, project done.
Okay, thank you. So here in this particular working for Krishna is very easy when we are actually within the association of devotees, because as per this verse or by the purport of Srila Prabhupada, we can see how we all get an opportunity to serve in the mission. We all get various opportunities to serve devotees, various opportunities to serve to propagate the mission of Krishna consciousness or Sankirtan. So these are all actually devotional service. At the same time, this is also an opportunity for us to engage our various propensities, because as practicing devotees, somebody is on the is coming to the level of the ninth verse of this particular chapter, where you take up the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness. However, we cannot fully fix our mind on Krishna. So in that stage, why we cannot fix our mind completely on Krishna? Because we have various propensities, we have various inclinations. So that is what is stopping us from completely being able to focus on Krishna. So it's not necessarily a distraction. At the same time, it's not necessarily always a qualification. So we just need to be very careful how we use our inclinations while trying to in serving Krishna. So Krishna, by creating this particular movement, Srila Prabhupada has given us so many opportunities for different kinds of services. Different people have different inclinations. They come with that. So they get an opportunity to both exercise that inclination, at the same time purify the inclination for the pleasure of Krishna. So the ultimate goal is to actually purify our hearts to an extent where whatever we do, whether it is speaking, hearing, cooking, cleaning, whatever we are doing, we want to do it for the pleasure of Krishna. So to come to that level, we need to actually start somewhere, and that starting point is given, is created. That safety net is spread by Srila Prabhupada in the form of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, where in this association we can actually involve all our inclinations in the service of Krishna, because all the sinful inclinations can anyway not be entertained, because anybody who's practicing spiritual life cannot involve their sinful inclinations anyway, because some of those inclinations, some of our inclinations needs to be given away, but some of our inclinations cannot be given away. They have to be doubted. But if without association of devotees, how are we going to dovetail the inclinations? So that is where Srila Prabhupada's mastermind in actually executing the will of Krishna. This is how we can appreciate Srila Prabhupada, how he not only gave us for an opportunity for pure devotional service in the sense of its ultimate definition, just focusing on Krishna. He taught us that through chanting. However, he also understood, okay, if I have to actually sustainably create the future for spreading bhakti, then there needs to be a structure. So he understood that by the mercy of his spiritual master, and executed that. This particular template that Krishna is giving in this particular chapter is actually laid out by Srila Prabhupada in the form of a movement. So within the same movement, we can go from this stage to the highest stage. But at the same time, we see even advanced devotees, for the sake of benefiting conditioned souls, engage in all kinds of activities. Srila Prabhupada set an example personally. He was a complete Paramhamsa. He could have just stayed in Vrindavan, but he actually took it up on himself to come and even teach the basic things to those people who didn't know anything about devotion service. So, excuse me. So it's quite amazing to see Srila Prabhupada's genius in actually creating this association where we get to involve all kinds of people, children, uh, like male, women, or old or young, all kinds of different kinds of people of different classifications. Everybody can actually engage in some form of service to Krishna. So even if a new person, they don't know anything, they can still do some service to devotees. So in that way, when they engage in work for Krishna, working for devotees, assisting devotees, they gradually gain the sukriti, they gradually gain purification of heart, so they can come to the next level. So in this way, all the services that we see in a temple or in the association of devotees, cooking, cleaning, sweeping, mopping, greeting, being kind, all kinds of help that we can offer in an association, it's actually benefiting us. So even if we like these days we are all doing it online because of the pandemic, however, it's such a great opportunity when we all can get to go more in person, just to meet devotees in a week, just to engage in some service to them, like cooking for them or serving them, hearing from them, speaking to them. All kinds of these services, they actually sometimes can feel like, oh, I have to actually travel, go to a place, or I can just sit and hear from my home. It's good because hearing is also a service. But when we do have an opportunity to go in person, or to actually go after the pandemic actually settles, when it is safer for everybody to actually gather together, so then it that opportunity, actually the magic there and that opportunity is actually because we get to personally serve other people, because through that service there is purification of heart, through that association there is purification of heart, because hearing is not a very easy thing to do, because really hearing is like a very difficult thing. It is said that anytime when somebody is speaking, those who are listening can retain actually 20% of what they hear, and it is said God knows what which part of those 20% what the person was speaking. So it's quite difficult to retain in this age of Kali, especially with so much of Zoom time these days. It's not very easy to actually listen and retain everything that we hear. So when we go in person in an association, it's not just about hearing, it's also about prasad, it's also about cooking, it's also about serving, cleaning, meeting. So there's so many other of our inclinations are all satisfied in that. So in that way, our heart also feels much closer to Krishna, much closer to devotees. So any opportunity we have to serve other devotees, we have to know it's not just me serving them, actually it's actually benefiting my devotion service also. So the best of the safety net for our Krishna consciousness is actually devotee association, because that is where we get to serve, involve a lot of our inclinations, because sitting and chanting your relationship with holy name does not involve a lot of other inclinations. It is just actually trying to focus more on the holy name, but it's not very easy to do it throughout the day. So in that way, we have to see how devotees are actually merciful personalities, that they offer us, just by their existence, they offer us various opportunities to engage in Krishna consciousness. So it's not that sometimes we it's very natural as conditioned beings, when we try to deal with devotees, we see them as, oh, okay, if if they were like this, it is better. If they were like this is better, like that. At the same time, we also need to understand, if not for these devotees, where are our opportunities to engage in the service of Krishna? Yeah, we can just sit and chant by ourselves, but it's not very easy. Once His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj was asked by a devotee, was informed by him that a particular devotee thought the association of devotees is a distraction for my chanting. There are too many things going on here. I'm not able to focus on my chanting, so I'm going away. So he was informed that this devotee has gone away to separately to chant. It's nothing wrong to go to chant or take a retreat or something. However, the attitude is also very important. So him considering devotees as a distraction or devotees as a burden or troublesome, that attitude is the problem. So Bhakti Maharaj said, um, there's nothing wrong in going and chanting, but the attitude should be right. And let's see how many months he lasts. And for first few months he was going very strong, but after 4 months the devotee saw suddenly this particular devotee is like disappearing. He is not chanting anymore in the same place that he used to for the same amount of time. So then suddenly he just disappeared, and then later devotees found he had difficulties. It's not to say that nobody can chant like that. However, it's not very easy, especially giving up the devotees with a kind of a negative sense, in the giving up the devotee association. Oh, they are very troublesome, so let me just mind my business separately. That is not going to help us in our devotion service. We may, for various reasons, live away from devotee association. However, in our hearts we need to actually hanker for their association, because when we come together we get to hear about Krishna, we get to serve Krishna, serve other devotees, hear the holy name, chant the holy name, sing the holy name. So there are more opportunities for devotional service in the association of devotees. So we cannot actually consider that as an optional thing. That is uh, the best safety net that we have given by Srila Prabhupada. So in various forms, today it is, even amidst the pandemic, we can do it through various forms like online. At the same time, we can take advantage of whatever forms we have. However, we need to understand in the core of our hearts, we need to maintain a favorable attitude toward the association of devotees. We can never think, oh, it's too much trouble being together with devotees. It's much easier. I maintain my space, I maintain my distance, because that distance is the gap that we are giving for Maya to enter, or for our weakness to become more stronger. So let's not make our weakness strong, rather make our association with devotees strong, so that our weakness can still become weak, and gradually we can actually overcome our weaknesses completely and come to this stage that Krishna is saying, to completely focus on Krishna without distraction. For that, the main instrument that Krishna is using to purify us is the association of devotees. So, and in this chapter of Bhagavad Gita 12, after speaking about the first stage where one can just focus on Krishna without distraction, if one cannot do, at least take up the regulative principles of devotional service, like regular chanting, regular hearing, reading about Krishna, and following the regulative principles. So even if one cannot do that, at least be in the association of devotees and work for Krishna, because this work is very directly involved uh, in propagating the mission of Krishna consciousness and assisting them in various ways. So, and then Krishna, we can see the magnanimity of Krishna, because we sometimes generally think, oh, this is pure devotion service, these are distractions, certain kind of things, but everything has its place. Krishna even gives place for other things which are not very, very directly Krishna conscious. Still, he gives them a place because they can be stepping stones to actually come to devotion service. Their only their credibility is, or their being there is, the main purpose is for them to actually guide people to come to Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, they don't have any utility. So you cannot sever them from that structure and still use them. It's not going to work. So we can see in Krishna in the verse 11 and 12 of this chapter 12, he explains how if somebody can actually not work in that consciousness of a devotee for Krishna, then at least they give all the results of their work for some good cause. It is very much removed. It's going to take a lot of time to come to this other level, but still something is better than nothing, because Krishna says there is no selfishness there. There is a tinge of selflessness there in trying to help others. So that will at least help them gradually purify and come. It's very slow, and in this day and age, it's not even sure how long it will take and when that will happen. But there can be people who can be engaged in that way. So now devotees are becoming smart enough to actually include those kind of activities under the umbrella of Krishna consciousness somewhere, so that it can actually benefit people. So, so in that way, Krishna is giving various opportunities, and Srila Prabhupada very, very mercifully and also masterfully created this association of devotees where we can accommodate all these various stages. So that is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. that he has given us this opportunity where he has involved all these various stages. Everything is possible in this association. Wherever we are, we can actually come forward, engage, and then purify and actually advance in Krishna consciousness. So that is the main purpose for Krishna to give these options. The option, why Krishna is giving this option, many times when we give options, people try to settle in on one option and does not go to the next. So then we think, okay, better give only one. Don't give too many options, then people will settle for the easiest one. That is how generally we think, and it could also be very much true. But here, as when we try to understand, we are trying to understand the mood of Krishna. He is thinking, okay, if I only give one opportunity, then others will be excluded. But Krishna is impartial. He wants to include everyone. So he gives various options. So that is Krishna's magnanimity. Now comes our responsibility. We should not be settling in one option, especially the easiest, the lowest option, and think, oh, still I can just be like this, and one day I'll just naturally advance. No, we try to choose a particular place which is suitable for us, and we have to see how we are advancing to the next step. So from our side, the responsibility is we just don't get stagnated in one of the options that Krishna is giving. Rather, we always see how we can move to the next option, how we can better our devotional service, better our attention on Krishna. So that is our responsibility. So it is Krishna's magnanimity and our responsibility. This combination will actually help us advance in Krishna consciousness. And I'll just finish with a little uh, discussion on the last section of this particular chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, and then we can open up for some questions if there are any. So after discussing all these different stages that Krishna was mentioning about bhakti, or either you just directly focus on me or engage in the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, or just work for me, or do some work and give the benefits to some good cause. It starts somewhere, becoming less selfish and gradually involving me in the equation, and in that also progressing forward. So after he mentioned that, somebody may think, oh, okay, what is the symptoms of a devotee? Because here he has very clearly mentioned the highest level of devotee is one who can actually focus, and that is the level that Krishna first mentioned as the dearest. So here in these coming verses, from verses 13 to 20, he will explain what is the qualification of the devotee. He's just focused on Krishna without distraction. But what are his qualities, personal qualities? Because as soon as we think someone who's focused on Krishna without distraction, we think someone just holding their japmala 24 hours, just closing their eyes and just chanting the holy name. We don't, it seems like the easiest way to imagine. But Krishna gives a very interesting way of identifying who are they by their qualities. He says, one who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, is free from false ego, who's equal to both happiness and distress. In this way, Krishna gives the qualities of a devotee. And then he says, such a devotee is dear to me. Because here one may see in the outside world also, people may pose or have some degree of these qualities. But Krishna is not speaking about them here. He's clearly saying a devotee who has these qualities are very dear to me. So it's very clear, as soon as you say somebody as a devotee, he's not just a devotee. He's not addressing anybody and everyone. He's saying already somebody is a devotee. That means he's chanting. He's either on the level of the verse 8 or on the level of verse 9. So this is another barometer that we have. Okay, if I think I'm advancing in devotion service, what is the degree of these qualities that I have developed? We also need to practice them at the same time. Just by the purification that happens through the practice of devotion service, we also develop more of these qualities. Like we try, and also Krishna provides more. So sometimes in India, you see, I'm not sure of these days, like earlier there used to be motorbikes where you can just means it's very difficult to start them, or even cars. So they would pour something, or like there are like pumps, water pumps. You pour little water and then you pump, and then the water starts coming. So after that, there's more water, but initially you need to involve some. So similarly, in our endeavor to practice bhakti, we may not have all these qualities, but if we try to be a little humble, and actually be in the association of devotees, serve the devotees, then through that process of the purification, we become naturally humble. We don't need to actually act as like humble, but we will become humble. But initially, we need to actually be obedient to the association of devotees, be actually humble in the try to be humble. Then as the purification happens, it becomes natural. It is actually awarded. It's not just an act, but it becomes very natural for us. So in this way, Krishna describes various qualities of a devotee that he is dear, that is dear to Krishna. So in this way, we can see how Krishna actually holds a special position, where he clearly says all other paths are subservient. They are all beneficial as long as they help one to come to the practice of bhakti. So in this way, he resolves a lot of things in this particular chapter through his discussion about devotion service. So is there anything else that anybody would like to add or ask or comment? Anything we can have, or we can continue a little more?
Yeah,
How do
Prabhuji,
you?
continue whatever time you can. We don't get if you are having inconvenience, so you can stop wherever. But continue maybe whatever time you want to finish, another 5-10 minutes. So then we will ask some
Yes.
questions. Go ahead.
Okay. Sure. So in this particular chapter, especially one particular, there are various statements that Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, which are like pearls or gems we can collect. So in one such statement in one of these purports in this particular chapter is Prabhupada says Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses, because we all know it's very difficult to uh, handle our senses. They are in the sense it's our mind who is the leader of the senses. At the same time, the senses themselves also, they're like matter. They don't have any desires of their own, but they get accustomed, they get used to certain kind of things. So it's the mind which is the center of the senses, which is called the sixth sense, which is the leader of all the five senses. So the purification of that is called as the proper defines Bhakti Yoga as the purification of senses, because there are many different definitions of Bhakti Yoga. So it's an interesting way of putting it, because why he is saying that purification of the senses, because initially we may not be just able to engage in Bhakti Yoga just for the pleasure of Krishna. Because Srila Rupa Goswami's definition of Bhakti Yoga is, especially Uttama Bhakti, is Anyabilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhyanavitam Anukulyana Krishnanushilanam Bhakti Uttama. Or as Nardimuni says, Hirshikena Hirshikena Sevanam, like giving up all kinds of upadhis, giving up all that, engaging our senses in the service of the owner of all senses. Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam. The leader of all the senses is Krishna. The owner of all our senses is Krishna. And engaging our senses for his pleasure is called as bhakti, giving up all other identities that we have. So in that sense of the definition, Srila Prabhupada is saying purification of the senses, because Bhakti Yoga is an amazing process where we engage even if we are not pure, and just the process itself purifies our senses more. So it's like an unending cycle. You engage in bhakti, you get more pure senses. When you get more pure, when you have purified senses, all that you want to do is actually devotion service. So we need to in our stage, we also need to be very consciously seeing, oh, how much is the purification of my senses happening? If my process of bhakti is proper, how I'm practicing, then this should happen. So if it is not happening, then we need to know, okay, there is something that I need to refine in the practice, how I do. So in that way, Srila Prabhupada is giving this nice definition that Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. So this we can remember for the rest of the week. Whenever we have difficulties in controlling our senses, we can understand, oh, that purification of my senses is not happening because I'm not practicing Bhakti Yoga the way it is supposed to be. So we don't need to beat ourselves. At the same time, we need to use this as a motivation, not like, because there is guilt and there is bad guilt. We don't want to provoke bad guilt through this particular statement. We want to actually increase the proper way of practicing Bhakti Yoga, because as I was saying, there is guilt and bad guilt. The guilt is very good. It's like, say, for example, I pinch myself, there is pain. So I stop. I cannot actually hurt myself more. That's why that pain is there, because there is a disease. where you don't actually, there is no pain sensation. People might think, oh wow, like overcoming pain is such a big deal today because there are so many industries. To manage pain management is a big deal. Just not feeling pain, especially terminal patients, we see cancer patients, just making them not feel the pain of the disease is a big deal. There's so much medication, there's so much suffering that they have to go through in order to not feel the pain. But here in this disease, you just don't experience pain. Even if someone just cuts through, you don't experience pain. We may think, oh, it's a good thing. But the problem is those kids, they may hurt themselves. They may even take a knife and cut themselves and not understand that it's bad for them because there is no pain. They will not be able to, they won't stop it. So they may just hurt themselves to a terminal way. So likewise, if there is always this guilt consciousness inbuilt in our mind to stop us from doing bad things, because there is pain when we pinch. Similarly, when I do something wrong, there is this sensation of guilt. So I understand, oh, this is not right, so I should not do this. So that is the utility of guilt, where we stop doing certain bad things. But what happens is this guilt can become like a pseudo guilt. Like, say for example, uh, how the pseudo guilt works is, oh, so I'm so bad, so I don't want to go to the association of devotees because only pure, they are very pure people. I'm not so pure, so let me stay away from them. So this is a bad guilt. This is pseudo guilt. So guilt is supposed to stand between us and Maya. That is what is the proper guilt. It is supposed to stand between us and what is not beneficial for devotion service. But when it stands between us and Krishna, that is called as bad guilt or a pseudo guilt. It's just our mind taking up an excuse to stay away from Krishna. So that is not real guilt at all. That is actually a pseudo guilt. So this particular statement we can remember for the rest of the week, that Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. Bhakti is performed with pure senses, but even if we don't have pure senses, we still engage in bhakti, and through that process, our senses become purified. The more it gets purified, the more we become eager in devotion service, interested in devotion service. Our intentions in devotion service become pure. So let us let this statement that bhakti yoga is the purification of the senses invoke this proper guilt. If at all if our senses are attracted to something which is not beneficial, and let us use this particular statement to go close to Krishna by engaging in the proper methods of devotional service for the pleasure of Krishna and for the service of devotees. So this is one statement which we can meditate for this for the rest of the week, so that we can actually understand the benefit that we have in practicing Krishna consciousness. So there are other statements also in this particular chapter. I can pick up another one. So Prabhupada in the verse 10, he mentions what is the difference between materialism and bhakti. He says, the only difference is that materialism, one works for sense gratification, and the same work can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. So he actually, there is a verse in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami defines what is the difference between lust and love. He says, when our senses are engaged for the sake of enjoying the senses, for the sake of our own gratification, so then that is called as kama. And when the senses are engaged for the gratification or satisfaction of Krishna, that is called as prema. So it's such an important aspect. Our senses, because we are personalists, we are not impersonalists. This particular chapter began with the discussion of uh, personalism versus impersonalism. And Krishna very clearly said that personalism is his path. And we as persons, we as having a form, the main aspect is the senses. Because when we, even though I have a body, if my senses are not working, I become actually useless. Say, for example, my eyes cannot see, my ears cannot hear, my hands cannot move. Then me having a body becomes a burden. They cannot actually benefit me or others. We practically become burdensome for our own selves, for others. So having the body but not having the senses working in the way it is supposed to, it's actually a troublesome thing. So that's why Srila Prabhupada and other acharyas, become very angry when impersonalists say the Supreme Lord does not have senses, because that's not the that's actually a very abominable situation, to not have senses, or to have senses and like not engage them in properly in the service of Krishna. So here we have senses, and it is the best we can bargain with this form, and having them and not utilizing them is a problem, because they cannot be but utilized. If you're not utilizing it for Krishna, then we will utilize it for other purposes. So that is why this particular chapter is focusing so much on the engagement of one's senses in the service to Krishna, because that is how it's the through which we can actually engage in purification. Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahyam indriye sevon mukhe jihvada swayam eva spuratyadaha. So Krishna says, Ata Shri Krishna Namadi. Therefore, one should engage in hearing Shri Krishna Namadi, hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, and other services to Krishna. Na bhavet grahyam indriya. They cannot be actually grabbed by the senses. These activities of Krishna's devotional service cannot be just performed by material senses. They cannot be grabbed by material senses, but they start with the senses. Sevon mukhehi jihvada, with an attitude of service, with a sincere attitude of service. When we engage our senses in service to Krishna, then those purified senses can actually uh, help us engage in service to Krishna. So we cannot think just because I have hands, I have eyes, ears, I can just chant here, I can just sing, I can play musical instruments, and that's Sankirtan. No, there needs to be an Sevon Mukhehi Jihvada. There needs to be a service attitude. And when with service attitude we engage our tongue in service to Krishna, then that's where everything begins. So that is why we speak about purification of the senses, because this particular opportunity that we have using our senses in Krishna service is not an ordinary thing. Being able to speak about Krishna, hear about Krishna, sing about Krishna, serve Krishna, using these senses, they are not just ordinary. We may do it so much very often in this world, so we may think, oh, it's another thing to do. But this particular opportunity is different from regular activities. These are the activities which can actually please our hearts and clean our hearts and satisfy our hearts. Only because who can actually become completely satisfied at heart? Savai pumsam paro dharmo yatho bhakti radokshaje ahaitukiya pratihata ye atma suprasidati. Only that person can become peaceful. That person can become satisfied. That person can become happy. Who's that person who can become happy? Sutta Goswami says the person who can become really, really happy is that person who engages in parodharma. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yatho bhakti radokshaje. What is that parodharma? Bhakti yoga to adokshaja. And how it is done? Ahaitukya pratihata. For the sake of the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, when one engages in the service of Krishna, adokshaja. Again, adokshaja has a very special meaning. Aksha is eyes. Akshaja is knowledge born from eyes. So Aksha here represents all other senses. All other senses, starting with eyes, there is knowledge gathering senses like eyes, ears, nose, skin, or touch, or tongue. So in this way, these are knowledge gathering senses. All these, the knowledge that we gather from through our senses can help us understand supreme truth. We think like that, and there are so many scholars, there are so many logicians who are trying to understand, scientists, so many people, but just by their own senses, the knowledge which is born from their own senses, they cannot understand. That's why Krishna is called as Adakshaja, because Adaha is someone who defeats the knowledge which is gathered through one's own senses. The knowledge gathered through one's own senses represents pride in one's own self, or confidence is one's own self, dependence on one's own knowledge, that actually Krishna destroys. That's why he is called as Adokshaja, one who destroys that pride that one has in his own senses, the ability in his own senses. So that is why the purification of the senses that happens through Bhakti Yoga is not to just give up our senses, rather to purify our senses. We are not just dependent on our senses, rather we are engaging our senses in Krishna service, so that through that engagement, that service attitude, the senses are purified and we can experience Krishna. So our ability to engage in Krishna service is not just our ability. It's about our intention to please Krishna, which actually satisfies him and helps us actually purify our senses and experience Krishna through these senses. Otherwise, these senses are material. They don't have any great utility in this world, because they only act as sources of misery if not used for Krishna service. So having senses is not very great. Just having them and engaging them for mundane purposes is not great, but engaging them for understanding Krishna, for serving Krishna, is the greatest utility that we can do with these senses. We neither have to hate them, nor we have to fall in infatuation with them. We have to just utilize them in Krishna service. So materialistic people are those who romanticize the senses. Gyanis or dry philosophers are those people who demonize the senses. However, devotees are those who utilize those senses in the service of Krishna for his pleasure and for their ultimate purification, so that they can actually engage in the service of Krishna only for his pleasure without any deviation. So, in this way, our senses can be used to go through these stages that Krishna is mentioning. Because only with the senses, it all starts with engagement of the senses. But gradual purification of our intentions, gradually we can move through these stages and come to the highest stage of being completely undeviated in our devotional service to Krishna. So that is the whole purpose of this particular chapter, that purification of the senses through engagement in Bhakti Yoga. And that happens very easily in the association of devotees, which is our actual safety net. So spreading the safety net in Bhakti is because the senses can distract us always. To make sure that we engage our senses in Krishna consciousness, but not get distracted by these senses, that is why we need the safety net, which is already provided by Srila Prabhupada. We don't need to spread it. All we need to do is stay within the safety net that he has created and engage our senses in Krishna service and the service of the devotees, and gradually purify our senses. Hare Krishna. I hope I shared
Yeah,
something which could be.
thank you,
Yes,
Prabhuji. So,
Rathyatra Prabhu.
yeah, thank you. And I am sorry we are troubling you with the difficult. I would not have requested to extend, but yeah, you told a lot of good things, or critical things towards the end. So, thank you for homeschooling, Prabhuji. So, I could feel everything. So, yeah, so I request devotees just to, if they have some questions they can think of. In the meantime, I will have some quick things. What Prabhuji told, I will little bit my observation or whatever I have seen heard from people, their observation, I will just repeat, so that you will take Prabhuji's words seriously, because they are coming from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, and they are called faultless Purana or scriptures. So you cannot find fault those things. So, and at the end, I will ask one question before I hand over to others, if they can ask and utilize this opportunity. So, Prabhuji, what I have seen is, as you said, if we get attached, whether we are not improving or learning, the getting attached is very important. I have heard people, they are so attached to the deities, they don't want to leave their home and go elsewhere or go to India or travel outside, because they say their deities will be neglected. So it's really, we don't understand. You may be thinking what he's talking, but that is really true. What I have seen, at least a small observation in my case, uh, I used to do DT worship morning, evening. I don't know how correctly I do it, but I do it. But if I am late in some program or gone somewhere, if it is time to offer arti, or mainly arti, let us forget. But if I time to offer bhoga or something, I feel restless. No, I feel something is missing. How can I eat? Not feeding. So that is something will definitely develop if we go on repeating it. You develop attachment. That's really amazing. I have seen people don't, and in I don't know, but most of you, there is a Mataji in Orissa. I don't know the exactly her name, where she is, or I might have forgotten. She has, after marriage, she has not left her home because she has to serve Jagannath or Krishna, and Srimati Radharani and Krishna. And it so happened people used to come and see her, and it is because of the power of Krishna only. So how can you say somebody doesn't go out of the building or seen not seen sunlight? I think in one occasion she has gone. Otherwise, after marriage, she has not stepped out of the home, and people in fact come to see her. So instead of, because she is so attached to the deities and other things, so it is amazing power. So that is another thing I had. I thought I will share. Then, as you said, that is, we retain at least 20% by what we hear, 10% what we read, then 50% what we see and hear. But what best thing is, as Prabhuji is practicing, 90% what we do. If we do yourself, you retain 90%. And what you say and write, that is one thing, but if you do yourself, that is the best thing. You listen, put into practice. And another amazing thing, again, my observation, usually it is difficult to hear, and even if we hear 20%, we retain. But if we love some person or love some scripture, if you have the attachment to that, you really, with rapt attention, you listen and you grab most of the things. You love your Guru Maharaj, you love some scriptures, you really are sincere, not wasting our time here. If we are sincerely thinking of something, just try to love, just give your everything, you will automatically remember. Prabhupada used to listen with complete attention. Even when his Guru Maharaj will be speaking, there won't be hardly anybody. He himself will be speaking, he listening his Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur will be speaking. So it is so many gatherings, everybody has gone, his Guru Maharaj is speaking, he is listening. So that is the love and affection between Guru and Sishya, or wherever you love someone, you will not able to get up. You will just keep on listening and you will retain maximum, but that very rarely happens. The practice, if we put it, there is nothing like that. As Prabhuji said, the best thing is practice. Then third thing, what Prabhuji also said, bhakti means we have to engage our senses. There is no other way. Narad also, Narad Muni says that, and these are the facts. And yeah, I will stop here. Prabhuji, one quick question. We are all, your whole class was how to control, or most of the time, control the senses. It's through devotional service. But most of the devotees who are new, or even I am new or something. So I just see my sense enjoyment will be restricted. So I may be listening, but I. But how that would be purified? It's a gradual process. I know, if you can tell, many people will thinking, if I jump fully to Krishna consciousness, I will not be able to, be one of the family members. The fear of family members will be there. One thing. Other thing is my sense enjoyment also will be restricted. So how do you answer their questions or their dilemma, how they get out of that thing, you know just so that, of course, it is a higher test and other things, but for a beginner, how do they approach the problem, so that that inhibition should go, even if they will get better enjoyment, or better sense gratification by serving Krishna? How do we just explain them this situation?
For Thank you, Rathyatra Prabhu, for also summarizing and for reflecting on some of the points. It was very helpful for me also. Your question about how do we answer a new person who might feel little hesitant to engage in Krishna consciousness because they might have to now or later lose a lot of gratifications of or the experiences that they have with their senses now or later. I think that is the question that I'm trying to grasp from what you said. So while trying to answer a new person for our own selves, we understand. At the same time, while trying to explain to a new person, I don't think we need to actually uh, tell them what they have to go through or anything, because Srila Prabhupada personally, when he dealt with the new Westerners, he didn't tell them anything much. He only told them to chant Hare Krishna and gave them prasad. And gradually, to that extent, it's so it's like quite interesting to notice that Srila Prabhupada first initiated and then put up the rules for those who got initiated after the initiation ceremony. He did not even mention what are the rules that those who are initiated should follow before the initiation. He initiated them and then he pasted a paper on the door saying all the initiates have to follow these following rules. So that's very different today. What happens in ISKCON is first for a few years, you're taught what you should be practicing after you get initiation. Once you come to that standard, and then we get initiated. There's nothing wrong in doing this. At the same time, we see how Prabhupada dealt with newcomers because he wasn't telling them anything in the sense of the rules and regulations as such. However, the main focus was in chanting and engaging them in devotional service. So when we deal with newcomers, we need to see how much we can make them come close to Krishna. So that should be our attitude. Whatever they can in their current situation, we need to be, as devotees, our duty is to be intelligent enough to engage them in devotion service in various ways, so that naturally that Krishna does the rest of the work. Because for the thousands and thousands of devotees in the movement, not everything is done by a preacher. Not everybody is can be guided from all their steps throughout their journey. In each and every step, it's very difficult for someone to be external and help us. So Krishna is there in everyone's heart. Surely he accessed the actual spiritual master internally. So he will give the inspiration for people to come closer. The For them, the initial path needs to be open. So we have to act as agents, where we can in some way or other introduce them, put them in touch with Krishna, and then make sure that touch grows, that sacred touch keeps increasing, that they stay more in touch with Krishna. And that's all. The rest through the process and Krishna in their hearts will do for sure. And that's how we all have come through this path also. So because these kind of questions need to be taken only when who is the person who's asking this. It all depends on that person because their socio-cultural backgrounds could be very different. So a generic answer would be just make them happy, feel happy in engaging in devotional service. So that is we need to be intelligent enough to understand how that needs to be done, and the rest will happen through that engagement of their engagement in Krishna consciousness. So it is our duty as devotees, that is our duty to understand what is it that this person can, how this person can be engaged in Krishna service in a way which will be easy for him now at his current stage. And by that engagement, gradually he will get purified. Uh, I hope this kind of, if not answered, at least
No,
touched
no, yes,
upon the
Prabhuji.
topic that.
No, no, yes, Prabhuji, absolutely. Yeah. So we should not force, but it's matter of time. We have to facilitate. That's very important, Prabhuji. Oh, and it will happen, as you said. Rajal. Thank you. So with this, I open it for devotees. Please, go ahead. If you have patience or time, please ask something is bothering you or how you want to improve or what's. Feel free. Prabhuji is one of our, devotee circle. He's one of the member like in our group. So please feel free if you have any questions. you know, just ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Krishnakant. Kindly forgive me, I joined
Hare
very
Krishna.
late in the call.
Oh,
And Pranam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Very nice to hear you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, Prabhu, a quick, not a question, but if you can elaborate on the point around Adhokshaja explanation that you said. So someone who we see through our eyes, we see, we smell, all these knowledge gaining senses, and that could lead to. I think you lightly touched upon a point that it could lead to pride. That okay, I am using my senses to gain knowledge, so this is the knowledge that I am gaining. Versus saying that devotees, we engage the senses, we utilize the senses in service. So even when we utilize the senses in service, so for example, now I'm attending this class and listening through my ears. I'm using my senses, but I'm gaining knowledge through this. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how um, the how it could, there are two sides to the coin here, right? One is using senses, gaining knowledge, and that leads to pride, something like that. And the other side of the coin is using senses, utilizing senses in service mode than in knowledge gaining mode. Maybe could you please elaborate if quickly, or if your schedule permits?
Thank you, Krishna, for an amazing question. Probably because of time, I did not get into the whole meaning of the word. Specifically, that word Adhokshaja, the name specifically denotes that the path of jnana, that how the path of jnana cannot actually fully understand Krishna, because the attitude is I gather a lot of knowledge. Through the knowledge, I develop detachment. And through that detachment, I sever the knots of attachment, and then I get liberated. That is the idea of Jnani. The whole purpose is this material existence is miserable. So I need to get liberated from this material existence. That is the purpose of life. So, how do I do that? Because why am I suffering in this world? Because I try to enjoy. So I don't want to enjoy anymore. So that means I need to detach. So for detachment, I need knowledge. So I develop knowledge through all these senses. Through that knowledge, I detach myself. And through that detachment, I stop all suffering. And then ultimately, I cut all the knots and I get liberated. That is their idea of liberation. So there, the whole thing is me. I hear, I develop detachment. I sever all the knots of attachment or happiness, and I get liberated. So everything is I based. So it all starts from the knowledge. So the root is the knowledge. That's why the whole path is called as jnana, because everything starts with me gathering knowledge. That me, that I conception is very strong, even though the idea of the whole idea is, the whole purpose is to get liberated, which does not happen as long as this person is I constituted. So that is why Krishna says, when people think with their own knowledge gathered by the strength of their own senses, they can get liberated or they can achieve the supreme lord. That's not going to happen, because there can be knowledge, but Krishna is not subservient to our knowledge. Krishna is subservient to the love that one possesses. So that is why this particular word denotes, glorifies the path of bhakti, because Krishna is only subservient to the love of a devotee. He is not subservient to anyone who is averse to actually loving him, though they may be having a lot of knowledge. So is that kind of touched upon your question,
Yes,
Prabhu?
Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. That helps, Prabhu. Thank you very much. It's the consciousness again. This is where the angle, if I understood it, your response correctly, the
Mhm.
consciousness, when you said I versus in a subservient mode, I mode versus the subservient mode, is the consciousness which is coming into play here. And that is what would distinguish whether I think that, okay, I heard Gaur Sharan Prabhu's class today and I gained this knowledge about senses, versus I thinking, okay, I heard Gaur Sharan Prabhu's class today and it will help in my sense control, and so that I can serve better. and I can show more love towards Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Like etymologically speaking, the word is specifically like differentiating the path of jnana and path of bhakti, like that, because karma is also involved with senses. So it's basically, in a very big perspective, it's discounting the path of karma, the path of jnana, and actually propagating or uh, giving a stamp to the path of bhakti very clearly. Because if you see the context of the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, it becomes very important. Who's that person? How can a soul be satisfied? Because then the audience with Parikshit Maharaj, there are a lot of Gyanis, there are a lot of other kinds of practitioners are sitting. So for Sutta Goswami to be very clear, because he only has a lot less time, and he also has to speak very straight. So this is just that one verse which just answers all the most important question. Actually, this question is asked by the Sutta Goswami sages, and Sutta Goswami is answering because the sages have a lot of other practitioners also with them. So the answer is very pointed. Yes, the highest dharma is bhakti. It's not jnana, it's not karma. However, we also can extend within the practice of bhakti. There is all the chance that we have just set out to practice. So we may have not complete pure intention. So we also can use this word as a reminder to be of proper intent in our practice of devotion service. However, this word in itself can be very clearly favoring the path of bhakti and discounting the paths of karma and jnana. However, we could use it in our personal application also.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you very much for clarifying, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you.
Prabhuji, just again, it's little bit a clarification. So, does another name of Krishna is Adhokyoja?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so what you summarized, and again, direct meaning of that is something beyond the sense perception.
Yes, one who is beyond our mundane sense perception.
Okay, Prabhuji. So yeah, so it is a nice explanation to know deep meaning. Thank you, Prabhuji. So yeah, anybody else? It's early morning in India, which is getting maybe late for some of your activities. So any quick questions? Ram Reddy Prabhu, I am picking on you. So anything you would like to ask, or who else? Lakshmi Narayan Prabhu has left, I think. So anybody else would like to ask any question before we hold Prabhuji for long? I think it is going above our head. Yeah, Ram Reddy Prabhu, go ahead, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. But yeah, I don't have any questions, Prabhuji, but thank you. Hare Krishna.
So,
Thank you.
Prabhu.
Thank you, Ratyatra Prabhu. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for also joining. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Yes, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, just before end, I will give a call after this. So, yeah, with this, I will end the call here. Please unmute all your phone and say big Haribol 3 times for Prabhuji, and wish he will be back in a month or 15-20 days here in US. I don't know what is his status or plan, but let us hope sooner he comes, it will be better. So yeah, just unmute and say big Hari Bol 3 times for Prabhuji and his family. Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Prabhu.